Alright, so we're going to talk next about solving inequalities, one-step and multi-step. And this all kind of looks crazy looking, but it's really just stating that the addition property and the subtraction property, which you've seen before, of adding something to both sides and subtracting something from both sides, just basically solving. So once we look at a couple of examples, it'll seem somewhat familiar to you. So this right here, we're at -5, so we're going to have x and -5, and then we're going to have a greater than symbol because we're headed towards the greater number. So x is greater than -5. The circle is open. And is -5 a solution then if it's open? No. It's everything greater, but not including -5. So all these are going to be x and -5, but this one now is going towards the smaller numbers, so that means x is less than -5. And it is still an open circle, so that again means no, -5 is not a solution. Now we have a closed circle still at -5, and we're going towards the greater number, so x is greater than or equal to. That's what that line means underneath that greater than sign, and we have a closed circle. So what that closed circle means is yes, -5 is a possible solution there, or is a solution. And then lastly, x is less than or equal to -5 because it is a closed circle at -5, and we're going less than. So that little small tail end of it goes towards the x, for x is less than -5. And yes, closed circle is going to give me -5 as a solution. So let's go ahead and use that adding and subtracting above. Always move the variable to the left side. Then the arrow will match your graph. So let's go ahead and solve for our y value. So subtracting the smaller variable, which should be the 4y here, bringing down what we have. 5 minus 4 is 1y, just y. Don't have to put the 1 in front. Subtract 2. -5 is, so if we always move the variable to the left side, so that would mean moving the y here, keeping the mouth, trying to eat the y. Just think of it kind of like a little monster. And then -5. Then the arrow will match our graph. And that will help if we were to graph this, just a quick little, so we're at -5, and we have an open circle. Y would be greater, so it's going to point to the right. That's the way our line would go. But only when that variable's on the left side. And it's easier to read, I think. All right, go ahead and try that next one on your own. Pause it, and then double check your answer when you're ready. First step, subtract the smaller variable. That way you don't deal with any negatives. Whoops, didn't know it could do that. And we would wind up with w plus 6 is less than or equal to -2.5, and then subtracting your 6, and w is less than or equal to -8.5. And so our arrow is pointing, since our variable's on the left and it's pointing to the left, then we know our graph is going to go that direction if we were to graph it. All right, continuing on. Safe things to do. These are things that you can do without affecting the direction of the inequality. And that's add or subtract from both sides, multiply or divide both sides by a positive number. That's key. That won't affect it. It's safe. So for an example here, we have 3x is less than, oh, hello. Used to do this all the time last year, so guess it wants to do it again this year. There we go. 3x is less than 7 plus 3. You can simply simplify 7 plus 3 without affecting that inequality. Unsafe things. So unsafe things would be changing the direction of the inequality sign. It becomes, so going this way, now this way. how that's going to happen is if we multiply or divide both sides by a negative number. You might remember that we had to switch our sign, go the other, swap it from the left to the right. So when you swap the left and the right hand side, you must also change the direction of that inequality sign. So if there would go that way. So we would swap it if we divide or multiply by a negative number, or if we're just changing, putting this on this side and the 12 on this side, we need to make sure we also swap our sign, because the 12, the mouth's trying to eat the 12. So just be careful when you're doing that. So when you multiply or divide by a negative number, you reverse the inequality. Well, why? For example, 3 to 7 is an increase. But from negative 3 to negative 7 is a decrease. So as you can see here, our inequalities are reversed. All right, so let's take a look at an example. If we were to solve for p, we would divide by negative 0.3 on both sides. And we would bring not our sign down the same way, because see how we're dividing by a negative on both sides? That's when we switch our sign and make it go the other direction. So we have negative 40. And if we want it to point in the right direction, we put our variable first, and we would switch our sign, and there we go. It still says the same thing. Negative 40 is less than or equal to p. P is greater than or equal to negative 40. The mouth is still facing open towards that p. So these are still equivalent. We're just rewriting it for the p to be first. Up here, we switched it because we divided by that negative. So to graph that, would be at negative 40. The line underneath there is going to give us a closed circle. And since p is greater, and it's also pointing it towards the right, greater goes to the right. And see how it's pointing, the little point is on the right side. Try that next one on your own. Remember that when you multiply by a negative on both sides, switch that sign. So multiplying by negative 5, to undo the negative 5 here, would give us z, and switch your sign, is negative 18. So to graph that, since the variable is on the left, it's pointing us to the right, and that it would be correct. But z is greater, because the mouth's trying to eat the z. Open circle, since we don't have a line, and it's greater going to the right. All right, next we have a couple of multi-step. So those are just like you're solving another a multi-step equation, only we have our inequality symbol here. So let's multiply both sides by 6 to get rid of that denominator. That's what I would do first. So we end up with 84 minus 12x is greater than or equal to 3x plus 9, because that's 6 canceled out there. Now let's get rid of the smaller variable. That would be the negative 12 by adding 12x to both sides. We get rid of that. 84 is greater than or equal to 15x plus 9. And then get rid of that 9 by subtracting. We get 75 is greater than or equal to 15x. Divide by 15 on both sides. And we get 5. Oops. 5 is greater than or equal to x. Or if you wanted to rewrite that again, putting our variable on the left, flipping our sign, and there it is. So close circle at 5. And we are going to go to the left. It's pointing us less than. Try that next one on your own. Multiply both sides by 2 first, and then go from there. Negative 2x is greater than x plus 7. And then I'm going to do the negative x here, so that way I don't leave myself with 0, because then that sometimes can confuse. So it's okay if you don't necessarily always do the smaller variable, move it. Okay, look, I'm dividing by a negative. Did you remember to switch your sign when you divide by that negative? So now we are at negative 2 1/3 with an open circle going to the left for less than. Roberto is delivering 5-gallon buckets of paint to a painting contractor. Each 5-gallon bucket weighs 55 pounds. Roberto weighs 188 pounds. If the maximum capacity of the tailgate lift on the truck is 1,700 pounds, how many buckets of paint can Roberto take in each trip? Okay, so let's first just figure out it's 55 pounds per bucket. So we're going to have 55 times an unknown number. But we also have to think about his weight. We have to add that in there. And we want this total value, the buckets, however many we have, plus him, to not be more than 1,700 pounds. That would be bad for the truck. So this value has to be less than, I guess it could be equal to, since it says maximum capacity, it could be that, it could include that, or up to that value. So we will put less than or equal to that value. And then we're going to solve. So minus 188. And 55x is less than or equal to 1,512. Divide by 55. And we get x is less than or equal to 27.49. So how many buckets maximum? How many buckets can you take on each? Well, not quite 28, so 27. Less than 27 or less than 27.